was the most beautiful, powerful, and crappy thing that I've experienced all rolled into one.
My name is Tiffany Toombs. I'm one of the co-founders of the Life Coach Launch School, and I am a trauma hypnotist. I have dove deep into healing myself and helping thousands of people across the world heal themselves over the last 10 years. And I recently went and did my very first ayahuasca ceremony. So it is Friday, July 14th, and I am leaving in about 45 minutes to head off to my first ever ayahuasca ceremony. And somebody actually asked me the other day, like, oh, what other psychedelics have you done? And I actually haven't done any other psychedelics. I smoked some weed in college, but nothing else. So this will be an interesting experience. I am mostly excited, a little bit nervous, but mostly excited. And I asked people the other day, like, if you've done this before, what tips would you have for me? And the number one tip that I got was to set an intention. And so the intention that I set for this trip is that I find that I kind of flirt with staying in my power, being in my power, but I don't really stay there fully. And it's almost like the pattern is being in my power, I burn out very, very quickly. And so it's almost like I haven't learned how to be there and do it in a healthy manner, or how to be in there and, you know, get rid of the burnout. But essentially every time I step into my power, I ultimately end up burnt out. And then I kind of shrink back and have to rest and recover from that burnout. And then it's like this dance. It's like this cha-cha back and forth. But I would love to stay there full time. One person asked me to write down any questions that I might have for Mother Ayahuasca before it happens. Apparently these answers come very quickly in the beginning of the journey, but to write down the questions, so I've done that. I might share them with you after. We'll just see how things go. But my main intention is just to get out of this block of burning myself out when I fully show up, when I am fully in my power, and that causes me to shrink back. I have been doing the ayahuasca diet all week, so really the only thing I've eaten is eggs, avocado, some fruit, fish, and steamed veggies. The dietary recommendations that we were given from this shaman were not as in-depth as what I found on another ayahuasca website, so I actually went to and had already started the dietary recommendations from this other website before my shaman sent these. So I also haven't had any pork in 2 weeks. I've been red meat free for 1 week now. No processed sugar for 2 weeks. No gluten for 2 weeks. No animal fats or like butter or anything like that for a week. No salt and pepper for a week. So yeah, I'm excited to see how things go. The reason I initially adhered so strictly to the ayahuasca diet was I didn't want the purge, which inevitably is going to come, but I wanted to minimize the purge. If you don't know, with ayahuasca, some websites say that ayahuasca is actually an anti-parasitic, and so it kills any parasites that are in you. I have been doing a parasite cleanse over the last couple months, so I would expect that there's not much parasites in there, but it really is going to remove anything that is not clean. Mother Ayahuasca is all about getting us back to clean energy, clean body, clean mind, clean spirit. So I was wanting to avoid the purge as quickly as much as I possibly could, because it can come out both ends. And so I wanted to avoid that. But somebody messaged me and they said, you know, when you purge, as you're purging, just set the intention of this is what I'm releasing. And that really reframed it for me, that now I'm like, I'm not avoiding the purge anymore, because now I have a different way of looking at it. Like, you know, yes, I'm vomiting whatever out of my belly, but I'm also, you know, releasing these limiting beliefs or these blocks or these things that no longer serve me in that way. So the other thing that people have said is that when and if it gets hard, just to breathe. I'm going to do my best to remember that.
that everything that happens, anybody that you see or anything that you see, anything that comes through is happening for us, not to us. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna finish getting things packed. I stopped eating 53 minutes ago, so I'll have about 7 hours of no food before we start this, just water. And so I'm gonna get packed up and we'll head out.
I know that there's the possibility that there will be challenging moments during this ceremony, but I also feel like there's a beaver on the road back there. I also feel like carrying like the weight of whatever this block that I'm hitting up against is far more painful, and this could just be like optimistic thinking, but I feel like it's far more painful carrying this every day and knowing just knowing that there's a block there, and I've used the tools that I have to as far as they can take me, but as Einstein says, you can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. And so sometimes we need to expand our level of consciousness to go through that block. Now I will say, in the last 2 weeks, as I've been gearing up for this, I've been doing a lot of inner work, and I've had some profound breakthroughs in the last 2 weeks. So maybe that's why I'm cautiously optimistic. I know there will be some challenging times, but I feel like it's like a workout. You push yourself and it sucks during it, but at the end you're like, oh, I feel so much better, right?
So before I share my experience with you, I want to talk a little bit about what ayahuasca is and kind of the general sense of the ceremony. These are questions that I've been asked a lot before I left and since I've been back. And so I just want to address these before I share my actual experience with you. So firstly, what is ayahuasca? Ayahuasca is a plant-based medicine that is a psychoactive or a psychedelic. The ayahuasca comes from the bark of the Banisteriopsis caapi vine, and it's then mixed with some other things to create the liquid that we then drink for the ceremony. You may also often hear ayahuasca referred to as the medicine, the sacrament, or Mother Aya. Now, based on the research that I've done, ayahuasca is kind of considered the peak psychedelic experience. I was told not to start my psychedelic journey with ayahuasca as it may be too intense, but I had done a lot of other deep healing work first. So I had been through a couple dark nights of the soul, and so my first psychedelic experience was actually this ayahuasca ceremony, though I wouldn't recommend that for everybody. Ayahuasca ceremonies originated with the shamans in South America, and it was used as a traditional religious or healing ceremony for people who are looking for higher levels of consciousness or who are looking to heal something going on inside of themselves. Ayahuasca is considered to be an anti-parasitic, and it cleanses out your energy, spiritual energy, and your body. So there is a purging phase, which we'll talk about more in a second, as part of the ayahuasca ceremony. So how does the ayahuasca ceremony run? Obviously, I've only ever done one ceremony, so I can only share the experience of how mine was run. Now, every coach and healer has their own specific lineage of where they learn techniques from, where they learn processes from, and then they mix that with their own kind of flair to create their own way. So my shaman that I worked with had his own lineage of where he learned these ceremonies from, and then those that he teaches and mentors and passes this down to will adapt their ceremonies based on his teachings and his lineage. So if you've had a different ceremony experience, it's not to say that one is right or wrong. It's just the lineage and the expression of the shaman, the individual shamans coming through. My ayahuasca ceremony was done in a yurt. Now, I didn't take any pictures because I wanted to respect both the shaman and the ceremony and everybody there. But I will say, to get to the yurt, it was a very beautiful property. You had to kind of walk through the forest to get to the yurt. There was very limited cell phone service, no electricity. It was almost off-grid. So we were in a yurt similar to this one. And the yurt is built in a circular structure. And what happened was everybody would set up their own kind of healing station. Some people had lots of pillows and cushions and blankets and different things that they felt that they needed for the ceremony. Other people had very, very simple stations where they just had like a sleeping bag and maybe like a foam mat or a yoga mat or something. So it's really about whatever's going to make you comfortable, because the ceremony does last for approximately 8 hours. Now, the ceremony was done at night. Ayahuasca is actually a stimulant, so I didn't have any issues staying awake, which is good because now that I'm a mom, I'm typically in bed by 10 o'clock and have trouble staying up past then. But because ayahuasca is a stimulant, that wasn't an issue in this case. So what happened with our ceremony is I got there a couple hours before we started. I met a lot of people when I first got there. I knew nobody going into it. And funnily enough, my extroverted husband, Sid, waited until I got there, waited until I had the 1 bar of service to message him and say, I'm here, I'm safe, I'll message you tomorrow morning, to say, you know, it's kind of scary that for your first psychedelic experience, you decided to go off and do it with a bunch of strangers, people that you don't actually know. And it's funny to me that the things that I've done in my life that profoundly changed my life were things that in my heart made sense. And like my soul knew that it was a hell yes experience, but everybody around me was like, wow, that's so brave, or oh my gosh, that's so scary, I could never do that. For me, I've wanted to go completely alone because I am very empathic and I am a healer. And so I know that if I had have gone with somebody that I knew and I kind of knew their circumstances or their situation, I didn't want to get drawn into an energy of feeling like I needed to look after them and not have my own experience. So for me, I'm glad that I went completely by myself. Again, that's not for everybody, and I appreciate that. So to start the ceremony, because it was my first time and there was a couple other people who it was their first time, the shaman did a mini orientation with us just to let us know kind of the history, his lineage, and what to expect. We then set up, we gave hugs to everybody else in the room, which I absolutely love. Ayahuasca is commonly talked about as being this thing that's going to strip away your ego and bring you back to a feeling of total love. At least that's where most people end up. That's not always the case with their full journey. We hugged everybody else in the room, and then we set up on our stations and we went around and everybody kind of shared their intention. I shared a limited intention with everybody else. I didn't really feel the need to go into the depth of what my intention was. So the intention that I shared was that I was ready to release anything that no longer served me. And my intention that I had set for myself and that I had journaled on was I wanted to release anything that stopped me from fully stepping into my power. And I had also, somebody had told me before I went to write down some questions that I wanted to get answers from during the ceremony, during the journey. And so the questions that I wrote down were things like, why, when I step into my power, do I burn out so quickly? What stops me from fully being in my power? What do I need to do, or who do I need to become to step into the woman that I see in my dreams and in my meditations fully? So most of my questions were kind of around that perspective. We then went one by one to get our medicine from the shaman, and everybody took different doses. I took a sensitive dose to start, but there were some people who took a very strong dose, some people who took a medium. And then after everybody had their medicine, there was about a 20-minute quiet period. After that, the shaman started chanting and doing like, it looked like a sweetgrass. I'm not 100% sure what it was, but just doing different chants. And he had told us beforehand, these chants were not in English. I think they were in Spanish. But he told us that the chants basically were meaning things like, please heal me, heal my body, heal my mind, heal my spirit. So he started those chants. Some of them were a little bit more sing-songy than others. And then after maybe about an hour and a half, he lit some tobacco and he blew it on our crown chakra, down our backs, on our heart and solar plexus chakra, and then into our open palms and our closed palms. After that, people were given the option for a second dose of medicine if they needed. And then he went back into the chants. There was a couple helpers there as well. And so they took some of the chants sometimes. There were other people who got up to play instruments throughout the night. Not all of them were like super established musicians, but it all sounded amazing from where I was and in my very non-musician, non-musically talented place. So some people, I think somebody played a flute, there was a saxophone, there was guitars, there was like the palm drums. Some people just sang songs. It was all really beautiful. Our ceremony lasted for about 8 hours. So we started about 8:30 in the evening and we went until about 4:30 in the morning. So most of that time is kind of filled with chants and songs and music of different types. And then when we finished up, he lit a single candle, put it in the center of the yurt, and we all shared like 1 or 2 sentences about our experience if we wanted, before we then got up to either go get food or go to sleep. And then the next morning, after we'd all had a little bit of sleep, we had a sharing and integration circle. So that's kind of how the ceremony works in general. Now let's talk about my personal experience and what I experienced. I remember going to the ceremony thinking, well, of course, I'm just going to let it happen. Like, I know that this is the next phase of my journey. My soul is really telling me, like, this is the next piece to unlock the next level for me. Like, of course, I'm just going to let it happen. I did a sensitive dose to start, and I was one of the last people to take the medicine. So I saw kind of everybody else take their medicine. I was the second last person to take it. And everybody else was taking theirs, and I was watching their faces, like they'd taken it and shudder. I was also warned about the taste of the ayahuasca. Personally, I didn't think it tasted terrible. It's kind of like a mix of like black licorice and molasses. It is very thick. There was some little chunks in it. And it wasn't something he had recently brewed. He made mention that he had made it back in like January. It was something that had, I'm guessing it's like wine. It gets better with age. So I was watching kind of everybody else's reaction to taking the medicine, and when they went back to their seat, just how they were reacting to it. And a lot of people started purging right away. Now, with the purging, it can happen through vomiting, it can happen through pooping, it can happen through crying or laughing or like snot. There's a whole bunch of different ways that the medicine will really just clear out your body and clear out any negative energies in your body. We were also told that the journey is more intense if you lay down. And so if you sit up, you can manage like the nausea and the intensity of the ceremony. But that wasn't actually my case. I spent most of the ceremony laying down and just relaxed, but we'll get to that. So I watched everybody else take theirs, and I took mine, and I went back and I sat down, and I was ready for something to happen. I just sat there in the 20 minutes of silence, and I was like, nothing is happening. Nothing's happening. I don't feel nauseous at all. And then I was like, well, maybe I'm not going to purge as hard because I did the diet like to a T. I've done some parasite cleanses recently, not necessarily because of the ayahuasca journey. I have just been doing a parasite cleanse. So I was like, maybe I don't have a whole lot to clear out, but nothing is happening. Nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. And then I kind of started to get tired, and I was like, I don't want to be that person who comes and like falls asleep during the ayahuasca ceremony, and then I go home and I have nothing to report to anybody about my experience. So I was just kind of sitting there like twiddling my thumbs, like nothing is happening, nothing is happening. I felt a little bit of relaxation happen, and at one point like a strip of my face, like diagonally across my face, kind of went numb. And I was like, well, that's interesting. Maybe it's going to happen now. And then nothing happened. So the first like really hour and a half of the ceremony, I was just kind of like, okay, well, I'm relaxed. I'm just going to like sit back and just relax and like, hopefully I don't fall asleep. And then I kept thinking like, if I go home Like, my husband's going to be pissed if I go home and nothing has happened. And I'm going to be pissed. And it's going to make a really crappy YouTube video because, you know, a lot of people in my audience want to know about my journey. After he came around, he did the tobacco, cleared our energies. He offered the second dose, and I was the second person up there. So I was like, I need to feel something. And he was like, are you feeling anything? And I was like, nothing except relaxed. And he's like, okay. So he gave me a bigger dose. And I think part of it as well was I wasn't expecting the liquid to be so thick when I took it the first time. And so maybe I didn't get the full shot the first time. Who knows? But I really emptied it in to my mouth this time. And I kind of felt my mouth kind of go like dry and cottony. So I went back, had a sip of water, and probably within 15 minutes, I was puking into my bucket. We all had little buckets. So I was puking into my bucket. I puked a couple times. It's not like a normal puking where like you puke and you still feel horrible. It's like a wave of nausea. And if you just let it come, you puke and then you feel better. So for me, it was like puke, puke, puke. And then I felt better. I went to dump my bucket, but one of the helpers came and took it from me and did that for me and gave me a bowl. And so I just kind of sat back. And then the voice in my head started again, like, now you've just puked it up. So now you're not going to get anything from it because it didn't even have a chance to take hold in your body. You just puked it up right away. And I could hear other people like puking outside. I was sitting right under an open window, so I could hear people puking into the trees, like really intensely. And I was like, nothing's happening for me. I just took a second dose. I can't ask for a third dose when he hasn't even finished giving out the second doses yet. It's just sitting there, nothing's happening. And I was like, you know what? Whatever. I'm just going to lay down. So I laid down, and I think in my mind, I was just going to go to sleep because I was like, nothing is happening, and I'm so frustrated. Is he going to give a third dose? He said sometimes he gives a third dose. Man, feeling a little bit defeated. And then I was just kind of laying there, and I just got hit with this wave of euphoria. And it was like the most beautiful and powerful feeling of love and support and safety that I have ever felt. I didn't get a lot of vision. So somebody had told me ahead of time, some people get vision, some people it's more of a body feeling. Some people it's more like hearing things. I heard a lot of things and I felt a lot of things, but I didn't surprisingly get a lot of visions. And I am a very visual person, but I did get this one vision, and it was like Mother Earth. It was actually, if you've ever seen the movie Moana, which is one of my favorite Disney movies, it was Tafiti basically holding me, like this beautiful green goddess just holding me in her hands like I was a little child and just loving me. Just this unconditional love and support and this feeling of safety, which is actually something that I've been working a lot on. Grounding my root chakra, feeling really safe. So she was just holding me and loving me. And then it would kind of zoom in on the image to like me cradling my son, being cradled in her hands. But I could see just me and my son and feeling the love that I felt for him. And then it would zoom out and it would be Tafiti holding me, and then zoom in, me holding my son, and then zoom out, Mother Earth holding me, loving me. And it was just so beautiful. And that lasted for quite a while, to be honest. And in that moment, these thoughts would start coming forward, or I'd hear these things that I commonly say to myself, or you know, just these snap judgments that pop into your head throughout the day. The thought would happen, and then I would hear this voice of like, that's the judgment. That's the criticism. That's shame. Like, we don't need that. Just let it go. And then I would say like very quietly, just let it go. And that thought would kind of fizzle away. And so I started to see like all of these thoughts that I regularly have where I judge or criticize myself coming up. And then the words like, that doesn't serve you, just let it go. And so as that was happening, I was thinking like, but what about the questions that I asked that I wanted answered? And then it was like, those are coming. And I remember thinking, you know, so many people commented on my Facebook post, when it gets hard, just breathe. There's nothing hard about this. Like, this is the most beautiful experience. This is so amazing. Like, I could just stay wrapped up in this cocoon of unconditional love and support forever. And then it got challenging. So I felt this wave of nausea coming up. So I sat up and I grabbed my bowl and I threw up a couple times into this bowl. And I knew that I needed to go and dump the bowl. That we'd been told, like, once you're done your purge, take it or ask one of the helpers for help to go and dump it so it doesn't like stink up the yurt and it doesn't get knocked over accidentally. And so I was like, I need to go and dump this. But there was no way that I was going to be able to stand because my legs were not working. I could barely sit up. And so I'm holding this bowl thinking, how do I get outside to dump this? And the voice came and said, you need to ask for help. And my ego responded and said, nope, I don't. And it was almost like I was watching this battle between the medicine and my ego. You need to ask for help. Hell no, I don't. I don't need anybody's help. If you don't ask for help, I'm just going to make it worse for you until you get help. Nope, not doing it. Okay, here it comes. And I puke again into the bowl. If I heard somebody purging, my ego, if I heard somebody purging and I was a helper, I would come and check on them. The medicine, nobody's going to rescue you. You have to say the words. And my ego was like, help. Not loud enough for anybody to hear. And then just say the words. Please don't make me be that person. Nobody else has asked for help. Turns out, I found out the next morning that other people had asked for help. I just was so in my own journey that I didn't know it. Please don't make me be the person who interrupts everybody else's journey to ask for help. I don't want to ask for help. If you don't ask for help, it's going to get so much worse. So I get hit with this wave of heat, and it is so hot. I feel like I'm burning up from the inside out. It was so intense, so uncomfortable. And so I'm trying to wave down the helper, but I can't even lift my arms. The medicine knew all the tricks that I was going to take, that my ego was going to take, and just would not. I could not even lift my arms. I could barely even pick up the bowl of my vomit off the floor. And the ego's like, don't make me do this. And the medicine was like, it's going to get worse. And then all of a sudden, my body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. So heavy. I barely even lift my head, and I'm sitting there oh. It got so intense and so painful that I overrode my ego. And I was just like, someone please help me dump this. And they came over right away. She came over right away and she was like, do you need another bucket right away? And I was like, no, I'm okay. But can you bring one back eventually just in case I have another round? And she was like, yeah, of course. And I was in so much pain. My body was so heavy. I literally felt like I had just gone 10 rounds in a cage with a lion. Every muscle hurt. And the medicine was just like, why did you wait so long? I didn't want to do this to you, but why did you wait so long? This is why you burn out in your power, is because you step into an ego-driven power place and not a true soul-led power place. So that was a massive realization for me, that it's my ego and this humiliation wound that I have, this fear of being the one to stand out too much, or people laughing at me because I need help, that was stopping me from truly fulfilling my mission in this life. And so I just kind of slumped back. My body hurt so bad, and I kind of flitted my eyes open, and somebody else who was on their own journey just got up. This guy brought me over a bucket. He was like, here you go. And I was like, thank you. I just curled up in the fetal position, and I was like, why does my body hurt so bad? And the voice, the medicine came and said, because this is what you do to your body every time you burn yourself out, every time you won't ask for help, every time you refuse to take advice or feedback. And I was just like, oh my gosh, it hurts so bad. And it was like, we had to show you, I'm sorry, but we had to show you what you're doing to yourself. And it was just so profound. And the rest of the journey was tame compared to that intensity. One person got up and they were playing the guitar and they were singing a song. I don't know all the lyrics that were in it, but there was one part of the song that was the stars of the angels in heaven. And I realized that this summer is the 10-year anniversary of the miscarriage that I had when my life first fell apart and I first started my healing journey. So I saw the face of the daughter that I lost in that miscarriage, and I saw my dog Maddox, who passed away a couple months after my son was born, and they were there supporting me on this journey. And I would get these spots of pain in my body, and I'd breathe into them And what would come up is like a different way that I had tried to rescue people, or a different way that I was seeking validation from people and not fully standing in my egoless power. And so I breathed that out, and I was just kind of like, huh, as I was breathing it out. And the shaman's girlfriend was actually sitting next to me, and I could feel like her loving energy. Like every time I was like, she would breathe with me, and her energy really helped me through that process. I don't know how long that lasted for, but it was just massive realizations about the ways that I judge and criticize myself, the way that I rescue and seek validation from other people. It was very, very profound. Before the ceremony wrapped up, the shaman came around with feathers and leaves that had been collected from the property, and he was like wiping away from our crown to our tail, just wiping away any energies that no longer served us, anything that needed to be released. Pretty sure he spent about 10 to 15 minutes wiping mine away. I couldn't even sit up for the process, but he would wipe, and I'd be like, ah. And then another pain spot in my body would come up, and I tried to push him away a couple times, but he's like, it's okay, we're just clearing it out. We're just clearing it out. And after he did that, I felt a lot more clear, and I felt like my journey was coming to an end. In the last probably 30 minutes of the ceremony, I was able to participate in some of the songs that people were singing. We did a couple like Om chants as a group. And by the time 4:30 rolled around and we were sharing, I was pretty much coherent again. My body was just exhausted. So when everybody else got up to go to the kitchen at 4:30 in the morning to get food, I was like, there's no way I can walk through the forest right now. So I went to sleep and had the best sleep ever. Since I've been back, I've been noticing a couple other lessons that kind of came through that I wasn't cognizant of during the ceremony. I've definitely felt a slowdown, a more methodical, intentional approach to everything I do. I don't feel the rush, the need to rush through things and get things done as quickly as possible. Even driving home, where I'm normally like hate it when somebody's right in front of me, going 10 over the speed limit. I was just like, I was content just to do the speed limit and just to like slow down and see all the beauty around me. It was a incredibly profound experience for me. And I am so, so grateful that I followed that heart nudge to go and do it. And I am forever changed from that experience.